Welcome back to Rumi Gold, where quiet mastery begins. What if the place you never fit was the exact place your soul was protecting? What if that sense of being outside the group was a call, not a curse? What if the edge of belonging was the beginning of clarity? What if you've been measuring yourself by someone else's ruler and quietly starving for your own approval the whole time? What if your real wealth isn't hidden in the crowd, but waiting in the silence where nobody is watching? Today we explore what it means to feel like an outsider, not as a tactic, but as a truth. You know the scenario. A room full of voices, but you're measuring your words before you speak. Like everyone else received the script, but you're still searching for your first line. Where do you hesitate? Where do you find yourself holding the corners of your truth, waiting for approval that never truly comes? Where in your life have you forced yourself to fit, just to keep the peace, just to avoid the stares, just to feel less alone, but end up more disconnected than before? There's an emotional cost here. It's not just loneliness, it's the weight of self-betrayal. It's the fatigue of endless performing. It's the quiet disappointment, so subtle you stop noticing it, like background noise. The body learns to shrink, the voice learns to whisper, the soul learns to wait its turn, sometimes for years. Let that breathe. Maybe you remember a moment from growing up, sitting on the edge of a metal bleacher, hands cold, watching a game you didn't care about, pretending you did. The buzz of the group pulls you closer, but somehow you're more aware of your own shoes, your breath, your awkwardness, than the noise around you. Or maybe it's last week, at a family dinner, sitting still while the laughter moves around the table like a current, and you feel like a stone in a river you were never meant to enter. The fork heavy in your hand, the smile practiced, the topics foreign. You nod along and wonder how many others are counting down the minutes. Let that land. You already know this. You carried that invisible backpack, the one filled with wondering when your difference would be welcomed, or at the very least, ignored. You've walked into rooms and measured how much of yourself you should leave at the door. Shoes off, pulse slowed. Maybe there's a tape that plays. Just don't stand out. Just blend today. But each day you traded a piece of your signal for someone else's noise. You traded clarity for comfort. There's nothing to prove. That's the discipline. Take a slow look at your memories, not to dramatize, but to recognize the feeling of not raising your hand when you had the right answer. The quiet of eating lunch alone and pretending you were busy. The suit you bought for a job you never really wanted. The words you swallowed, so the tension in a room would break everywhere but inside you. Let that breathe. There's no shame in this. It's universal. Even the loudest voices you know have sat in the chair at the edge, in boardrooms, in bedrooms, in places that smell like old coffee and regret. Everyone has a pair of shoes they keep for occasions that never really fit. Maybe you find yourself in a meeting, nodding at the tempo of the room, but inside, you're silent, observing the rhythm, noticing what goes unsaid. You see what's missing. You've always seen what's missing. It's not burden, it's a quiet gift. The world only moves as fast as its most honest observer. There's something here. Stay with it. No need to fix, no need to run, no need to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. Night after night, you sat up later than you should have, replaying conversations that everyone else forgot, wondering if the very things you couldn't repress were the same things that kept you safe, sacrificing pieces of yourself to the unspoken gods of acceptance. But the center always knew. You sit, now, more whole than before. Every misfit moment, evenings spent alone, the training ground for real listening, real sensing, the wisdom in not reaching. You already feel it. There's a chair at the edge of every room. There are quiet shoes by the door. The path of sacred individuality isn't loud. It isn't made of slogans. It's the gentle discipline of not rushing toward the group when your bones want stillness, another breath, another layer of quiet acceptance, permission to hunger for something more real, more yours, more lasting than belonging on someone else's terms. Let that land. There's nothing to prove. Every man, woman, or child who's felt outside, it was never punishment. It's how rare things stay intact. True gold stays deep in the earth for decades, unseen and untouched, until it's ready to surface. You were never meant to fit all the way in. That ache in your chest, the difference you carry, it's an instruction, not a flaw. It asks for patience, strength in restraint, honor in holding your position, not out of spite, but as devotion to the spark within. Let that breathe. If the world feels noisy right now, let it sit, breathe. Remember how many times you've survived feeling different, how many moments you did not betray yourself, even when you bent. The discipline is quiet, the gold is real. This isn't about motivation. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. No closing, no summary, just space, just silence. Let it echo. Somewhere along the line, you were taught to blend in, not in big, obvious ways at first, but through 1,000 quiet nudges, the message landed. Don't be too loud. Don't stand out. Don't make it complicated for the group. It felt like protection. But what it really bred was a slow kind of emptiness. You already know this emptiness. It lives beneath the surface, polite and practiced, hiding behind phrases like, "I'm just being realistic." Most don't question it. The urge to blend in is baked into the walls, at home, at work, in the quiet rules no one says out loud. Like some blueprint we inherit, we memorize the logic of sameness. Every culture hands you a mask, not to decorate your face, but to disappear it. We convince ourselves that safety comes from being hard to notice. Don't be different, don't be difficult, don't be wild. Just make it easy for everyone else. It's like a tiger in a zoo, watching parrots on perches, all learning to play the piano. Eventually, the tiger tries to play along. Awkward pause pressing ivory, heart pounding, but the music isn't his. He quiets his roar, hoping, maybe, if he gets the song right, someone will let him belong. Let that echo, because you can spot the part of yourself right now that's nudged the wild into silence. You feel it every time you second-guess a gut instinct, or shrink your voice at the dinner table, or dress a little less bright. We've been trained to trade what's real for what's acceptable. The culture calls it getting along. What it really means is learning to disappear, piece by piece, until only the convenient version of you remains. You already know this. You feel it in the way conformity feels like caution, not calm. You sense it in the way difference is mistaken for a threat, not a resource. The tension. Be yourself, but only if it fits the mold. And if it doesn't, make your own spirit suspicious of itself. That's the discipline this world teaches. Manage your edges. Smooth your roughness. Smile so you don't make anyone anxious. This isn't about being right. Think of this like poorly built architecture. Imagine a house thrown together in a hurry. Every wall follows the same lines. Every room repeats the last. It stands, barely, until a real storm comes. The sameness isn't strength. The sameness is what makes it fragile. When culture prizes sameness, it builds a world that can't hold the weather of real life. Any spark, any true color, feels like a risk. And so we hide the parts of ourselves that could rebuild the foundation, the misfit tools, the strange gifts, the wild natures. It happens slowly, like in martial arts. The first lesson isn't about strength, but compliance. You follow the forms, you copy the movements, the rationale, master the rules before you question them. Most stop there. But some, the ones who feel the itch of difference, they sense the lie, that mastery and mimicry are not the same thing. Let that land. Every time you try to be like everyone else, you put your tiger paws on the keyboard. You play the notes, but the music doesn't move you. Someone claps, you nod, but inside, something silent is lost. The truth is, the tiger was never meant to play piano, especially not in a room of parrots. But culture loves a parrot. It's easy to measure, easy to replace. Parrots repeat, tigers disrupt. There's an old survival code that says, fit in or face exile. Once, maybe, that was true. But now, the price of fitting in is shrinking so small you leave your spirit outside the door. The world stays the same. You already know this. Ask yourself, where have I mistaken safety for self-erasure? Where have I modeled my living after what pleases the parrots, not the pulse of my own design? We talk a lot about peace, but most confuse peace with lack of friction. Real peace isn't dull, it's alive. It doesn't ask you to fold your colors. It doesn't need you to rehearse another man's script. Let that echo. All of this is conditioning, not personal failure. Just a pattern repeated so often, it feels like the air we breathe, going along to get along. Lowering our voice because that's just the way it is here. But sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is refuse the discipline of the group. Sit for 10 minutes in a silent room, let your breath settle, and you can still hear the script. Don't say that. Don't ask for more. Don't draw attention. Your disruption is divine. Your design was meant to interrupt the song, to remind the parrots what wind through the grass sounds like. There's nothing to prove. Rebuilding begins with this level of honesty. Look at the walls you once thought were shelter and see them for what they are, fences, the real safety. Honoring the animal that refuses the disguise. The silent power of a spirit, or return. That's the discipline. Let that land. What if the feeling of being different isn't a mistake, but a message? What if every quirk in your character, every old scar, every odd sensitivity you keep tucking out of sight is proof? Not proof that you're broken, but a signal you've been waiting for. What if the part of you you most try to mute, dodge, or fix is the doorway, not to fitting in, but to standing out in the only way that matters, quietly, unmistakably, as yourself? There's nothing accidental about how you're built. The law of one says there's a thread running through all existence, everything connected, nothing truly alone. Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life?" The old teachings point in the same direction. The thing you're hiding is no flaw. It's the fingerprint of your design. You already know what I mean. That ache to belong never quite goes away. That moment at the table when you laugh a little too late, or the room goes quiet after you speak up, it's old. The days being called weird, sensitive, too much, or never enough of the right things. You walk home replaying the moment. You promise yourself, next time, blend in, shrink, edit. But what if next time you leaned in, not out? What if the parts that never seem to click are actually the exact coordinates of your soul's assignment? Pause there, let that breathe. There's a myth that says we all supposed to come off the same factory line. The right schools, the right words, the right friends, hobbies, tastes. But the law of one isn't sameness. It is the visible diversity of an invisible unity. A field full of wildflowers isn't less beautiful because every leaf is different. Your assignment is never to fade into the field. It is to light up as yourself, even if your glow comes out a little sideways. Think of the artist, the kid who drew on the desk instead of doing fractions, the one scolded for daydreaming, never paying attention. 20 years later, first to envision the product nobody else could, turns colors into ideas, ideas into solutions, didn't fit the system, designed her own. What started as troublemaker energy became innovation. Then see the quiet one, the kid nobody picked for gym class, the one who watched before he spoke and heard the details nobody noticed. He grew up thinking silence was weakness, but when it was time for a real decision, the voice people trusted, not loud, not pushy, grounded, a leader who knew how to listen. Or the third anchor, the intuitive, grew up in a house that never talked emotions, picked up on every glance, every mood, got called dramatic, got told it was all in her head, until one day she's the one who sees the generational pattern, stands in the fire, not in spite of her sensitivity, but because of it. Let's sit with that, the fingerprints of your difference. They are where the assignment lives. We try to sand them away, but they're carved deeper than you think. They're not scars to erase, they're maps. They don't just mark the edge of your weirdness. Sometimes it's the guy who's always making jokes in serious meetings, the one who can sense tension before it turns ugly. He learned to read a room because he grew up in chaos. Now, in a high-stakes company, that edge saves deals. Humor alchemizes pressure into flow. There's the girl who's bad with numbers, called scatterbrained her whole life, but her mind moves in 3 directions at once. Every mistake on a spreadsheet pulls her eye to a bigger picture nobody else sees. She doesn't memorize formulas. She solves puzzles everyone else ignores. That's the discipline. Everyone you admire, somewhere they stopped crawling and risked their wings. It doesn't have to be world-changing. It just has to be true. The world doesn't need a million copies of the same blueprint. The law of one is unity through difference, not sameness through surrender. You're not meant to erase what sets you apart. Your contradictions are not curses. Some days, yes, carrying your assignment feels rough, but easy isn't evidence. Quiet usefulness isn't always glamorous, but it is sacred. You can spend your whole life sanding down corners, or you can start to see them as handles. If you're here to carry something, you need the grip of difference. Your wrongness might just be your way in. Everything you tried to edit out. Rumi called it your wings. The old urge will tell you to trade difference for acceptance, to buy relief at the cost of your destiny. But fitting in never bought anyone real peace. It only rented a mask. Slow down. Don't answer that urge so quickly. Maybe comfort isn't currency. Maybe your assignment is to stay just as you are, in a world desperate for everyone to look the same. Look around. the ones building quiet wealth, deep relationships, real legacy. They honor what doesn't fit, not out of stubbornness, but because life flows through difference. You see it in nature, you see it in art, you see it in work that lasts. Your uniqueness isn't decoration, it's direction. Let's breathe that in. You were born with wings. Don't reach for the ground. There's nothing to prove. Have you ever felt invisible, even when you're right in front of them? Maybe you've tried to explain yourself in a meeting, to a friend, over the dinner table, and something just doesn't land. You say the real thing, but it gets missed. It brushes past, like you're speaking another language. That ache, most of us know it. The ache of not being understood. But here's a sharper edge. What if being misunderstood is proof you actually being real? Think about it. If everyone nods along, if everyone agrees, are you even showing them your soul? Or just reading the script they expect from you? Let's get honest. Most people aren't listening for truth. They're listening for comfort, familiar sounds, validation. When you break that pattern, even gently, you become a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit the old picture. That can sting, it can feel like exile. But is it really exile? Or is it the first breath of freedom? Let that land. Everyday life teaches us ehrlich, keep yourself smooth, stay agreeable, don't rattle the room. You see it on the train, in offices, in family rooms. The cost is real. You start trimming your edges just to keep the peace. And slowly, you disappear. Not because you're different, but because you stopped being whole. Somewhere along the way, most of us traded the messy spark of being real for the numb safety of being understood. But the two are not the same. Realness is jagged sometimes. It cracks illusions. It's not always polite. It's not meant to be. Listen, you already know this. There will always be a part of you that doesn't fit inside someone else's story. The quietest truth, that's not your failure. It's your invitation. That's your actual wealth. Think of the woman who finally stopped performing. Years in the role, she could recite the script by heart, knew every look, every pause, every I'm fine. But one morning, she didn't. She let herself be seen in the raw, not for attention, but because the old mask got too heavy. And yes, some people drifted away. But for the first time, she could breathe her own air. The cost, she lost nothing but the performance. The gain, she got herself back. Or the spiritual man. He tried to bring his friends along, explained his path, his shifts, shared openly. But the more real he became, the less they recognized themselves in him. They turned away, quietly at first, then completely. That loneliness was sharp. But look closer. There was peace in that silence. A wide open field. He didn't have to shrink to keep his place. He was free, finally, to be whole in solitude. That's the discipline. The founder who chose what was true over what was trendy. She had to fire herself from her own reputation. For a while, the company got smaller. Clients left. There was doubt. But underneath, there was a current of clarity. Deep and unbreakable. She knew she was trading applause for actual substance. In time, the right people found her. And this time, she didn't have to hide to belong. Jesus set the example. He wouldn't perform for the crowd. He stood in his own center, unmoved by misunderstanding. Buddha, too. Silence over argument. Stillness over spectacle. They were both more real, less relatable. Was that selfish, or was it sacred? There's nothing to prove. Alan Watts once said, "You're under no obligation to be the person you were 5 minutes ago. He laughed at the idea that we have to stay understandable for other people's comfort. Ram Dass would point to the beauty of being a mystery even to yourself, that spiritual freedom is not packaging your soul for easy consumption. It is stepping out of the box, sitting quietly, and letting yourself be seen. Even and especially when no one quite gets it. That's wholeness, not audience. You're not here to package yourself for public approval. You're here to be real, sharp edges and all. Not cruel, not careless, just undivided. That's what ripples. That's what echoes through a room, even in silence. You may never get total understanding from the crowd, but you'll have something rarer, self-respect, breath that's your own. Let's sit with that. Being misunderstood doesn't mean you're lost. Sometimes it means you've stopped pretending, like a craftsman who sharpens his blade alone, not to impress, but to keep it honest, like a builder who refuses cheap shortcuts, like a monk who closes his eyes in a busy station, not to escape, but to center. It isn't easy, but it's unshakable. You are not meant to be understood by everyone. You are meant to be honest with yourself. Realness will always be a little lonely, but there's room in that solitude, space for breath, for new clarity, for a peace that doesn't shift with opinion. Maybe this is what clarity sounds like. You can stop chasing agreement. You can stop editing yourself for belonging. All you stand to lose is the echo chamber. All you stand to gain is your whole quiet self. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. Here's something most men never say out loud. What if your feeling of being set apart wasn't an accident, but an assignment? What if what looked like exile was actually architecture? The quiet scaffolding of something sacred being raised inside you. Brick by patient brick, room after silent room. What if the season you call delay is divine engineering? Why does it feel like everyone else is moving on, moving up, and you're still underground? Let that land. You see, nobody teaches us that waiting can be sacred. In every story of real transformation, there's a hidden room, like the secret heart of an old temple, dark, echoing, stone walls older than memory itself. You're not locked out, you're being invited deeper. The silence you feel pressing in, it's not punishment, it's a form of protection. Every future foundation rests on this first discipline. Not being seen, not being needed, not being applauded. The world uses noise to cover its emptiness. You don't have to. You're being built for something even silence can't hold. That's the discipline. Think of the desert. Every prophet, every real leader spent time there. Jesus, Moses, maybe you, in your own way. There's always that long, quiet walk where nothing is growing, where the sand gets into everything, and a man starts hearing himself in a way the city never allowed. It can look like exile from the outside, but what if it's really expansion? If you've ever felt late, look closer. Roots don't bloom first, neither do legacies. In sacred geometry, the blueprint is drawn, erased, redrawn, all before a single stone appears above ground. Massive work happens in the dark, in secret. There is dignity here. The cocoon isn't just a shell. It's more like a blueprint coded into your bones. A hidden chamber where pressure creates alignment, where every doubt gets weighed, every longing met alone. This isn't exile. It's the inner temple coming online, the walls rising, not to trap, but to protect the original signal of who you are. You can't rush this. The foundation has to bear the legacy. If it cracks, the temple falls. Let's sit with that. Reflect for a moment. Where are you still chasing to be let in? Where do you judge your roots because there are no leaves to show? What do you call delay when you could call it construction? Maybe what you call alienation is activation. You are not being kept out. You are being carved out, shaped by solitude, not by shortage. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. Think of the ancient masons, the ones who carved cathedrals in silence. No applause, just dust and stone. The temple wasn't for show, it was sanctuary. Every block set in the dark built a place for light to land later. Maybe that's you. For now, I want to give you 3 stories. The late bloomer who studied for years, had doors close, friends move on, but held the vision. One day, clarity just settled in like the sun rising. The world felt quiet, and in that quiet, his work became undeniable. Not louder, just truer. He became the root, not the flower. Foundations that cannot be moved. Think of the desert wanderer who left everything he knew, lost the timeline, watched season after season of nothing. Yet in that dryness, he learned the language of water. The first rain found him ready, not bitter. The world called him slow. He became a riverbed. And the architect who built for decades in obscurity. He sketched hidden blueprints while others cut corners. He trusted the slow reveal. When the stained glass finally caught sunlight, everyone saw the beauty. Nobody could see the decades of darkness, the silent discipline, the patience it took not to break ground too soon. Maybe being set apart isn't a setback. Maybe it's a setup for depth, for roots that hold, so legacies don't wash away in the first hard storm. It's easy to compare timelines when you're only seeing exteriors, but architecture is always more underground than above. Most of your becoming is invisible, even to you. You already know this. Let your loneliness remind you you are still under construction. Let your delays remind you even temples have to wait for their crown. Let your quiet moments remind you pressure can be holy. Depth is not delay. Alignment never asks for rush. When you're kept underground, sometimes it's for your roots to grip what applause could never reach. There's nothing to prove. You do not have to bloom on their schedule. So if you are not seen right now, if you are not called forward, named, welcomed, crowned, if you are in a room that feels walled in, maybe you are not imprisoned. Maybe you are being perfected. Maybe you are the pillar being shaped for the weight of generations. The foundation that will hold 1,000 mornings, even if nobody thanks you. A temple awakening inside you, silent, vast, brick by slow, unmoving brick. Your timeline cannot be late. If you are aligning with what's real, that's the discipline. This is the quiet moment when the crowd is gone. When silence is what's left after noise. When you sit with the shape of what you truly are and notice it doesn't fit anywhere by accident. You've heard it. Your whole life, what's different about you should be hidden, tucked away, sanded down until you pass through the world without friction. But that friction, it's the mark, the sign you're real. Take a slow breath and look at your own hands. They don't match anyone else's exactly. The way you rest your knuckles on a table, the way your thumb brushes the page, that small difference, that quiet marking, isn't disorder, it's design. The world sells sameness like a safety net. If you buy it, you hang suspended over a life that never drops you, but never lifts you either, because depth isn't safe, and safety isn't depth. Let that land. Everything that felt odd about you too much, too intense, too sensitive, too stubborn, too private was never a defect. It's holy ground. The shape you brought here is not a mistake. It's a letter from silence, written in your own language, and only you can read it. There's nothing to prove. What you think disqualifies you is what actually qualifies you. What pushes people away is also what calls your true ones in. What's been named your edge is the doorway, not an exit, not a wound to hide, but a place you lead from. Let that echo. You already know this, not because anyone told you, but because your life has tried to show you again and again. No great movement begins in the middle. Every medicine for a tired world arrives from the edge. The outlier heals the room, the wanderer carries the map back, and the one who left first is the one whose return means something. We live in a culture addicted to categories, to fitting in, to lowering the voice so it won't disturb the surface. But that's not your work. Your difference is medicine. Your restlessness is a compass, and the place you don't fit is the reason you belong. It doesn't have to be dramatic to be true. Look at the foundation of any house. It was poured to fit the land, never the other way around. No builder is surprised by a crooked stone. The secret is anchoring into the difference. That's the discipline. Maybe you learn to shrink your presence, to bend your back, make yourself digestible. Maybe you mastered invisibility not out of weakness, but as protection. Let it be said that armor was wisdom once, and you don't have to throw it away. You can set it down stone by stone and step forward unarmored. Real prosperity is never about hiding the gold. It's living so nothing valuable is hidden from you anymore. If you practiced just one thing today, try noticing your edge. Not the part that tries to break the world, but the part that just won't bend. Practice standing exactly as you are, silent, present, unashamed, and watch how the day opens. Watch how the air changes when you don't shrink. There's nothing to prove. Let's make this real, right here, right now. I'll speak, and you let these words settle like stone in water. Not as wishful thinking, but as a vow. 8 affirmations, anchored twice for the weight to anchor deep. I build my future stone by stone. I build my future stone by stone. I trust the silence between my words. I trust the silence between my words. My difference is holy ground, not a fault. My difference is holy ground, not a fault. I carry medicine no one else can bring. I carry medicine no one else can bring. I lead from my edge, not my wounds. I lead from my edge, not my wounds. I arrive whole, nothing left behind. I arrive whole, nothing left behind. Prosperity finds me at my most true. Prosperity finds me at my most true. I belong exactly where I stand. I belong exactly where I stand. Let that breathe. This isn't about motivation. It's alignment. It's remembering. It's rest. What you once hid becomes what you offer. The edge you stand on becomes your entryway. And the difference you thought would exile you becomes the foundation you build on. If this served you, subscribe. We post daily. Your edge is where eternity begins. Your edge is where eternity begins. Your edge is where eternity begins.